never believed people could disappear in the woods without a trace until I watched my best friend get dragged into the darkness right in front of me. And the worst part is I still hear his voice outside my house sometimes at night. This happened back in November of 2022 when me and my three friends Tyler, Mason, and Eric planned a weekend hunting trip deep in the forests of Montana. Tyler said his uncle owned an old cabin out there miles away from civilization with no nearby houses, no cell signal, and nothing except endless woods. At first, everything felt normal during the drive. We joked around, listened to music, and stopped at a gas station for snacks, but things started feeling wrong the second we entered the forest road. The deeper we drove, the quieter everything became. No birds, no animals, nothing. Even Eric noticed it and quietly said the place felt dead. Nobody answered after that because honestly it really did. About an hour later, we finally reached the cabin, and the second I saw it, I got this horrible feeling in my stomach. The cabin was old, dark, and falling apart. Tall pine trees surrounded it so tightly that barely any sunlight reached the ground, and the woods behind the cabin looked like a giant black wall stretching forever. Tyler laughed nervously and called it the perfect horror movie location, but deep down I already wanted to leave. We unpacked our bags and started a fire inside because the temperature was freezing. Around 8 p.m., it became completely dark outside, and I mean real darkness, the kind where you can stand at a window and see absolutely nothing staring back at you. That's when we heard the whistle. A long, slow whistle somewhere deep in the woods. We all stopped talking immediately. Tyler looked toward the window and asked if we heard that. Before anybody answered, the whistle came again. Only this time it was closer. Eric tried, saying it was probably another hunter, but even he didn't sound convinced. There was something wrong about the sound. It sounded human, but not completely human, like something trying its best to copy a person. Then silence covered the woods again. A few seconds later, something slammed against the outside wall of the cabin so hard the entire place shook. Mason jumped up instantly asking what the hell that was, but nobody answered because we were all terrified. Tyler grabbed a flashlight and slowly walked toward the front window. I remember my heart beating so hard it actually hurt. Tyler peeked outside and instantly froze. His entire face changed. I asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer at first. He just whispered that somebody was standing out there. The room went silent. Tyler aimed the flashlight through the window toward the trees. At first I didn't see anything, then suddenly I saw it standing between two trees, maybe 50 yards away. It was tall, way too tall, and its arms looked unnaturally long. The figure wasn't moving at all. It just stood there watching us. Then it whistled again, the exact same whistle. Hearing it that close made my stomach drop because it sounded practiced, like a creature trying to perfectly imitate a human sound. Eric whispered that it wasn't a person, and right after he said that, the figure suddenly moved behind the trees faster than anything I had ever seen before. Tyler immediately locked the front door. Nobody laughed anymore after that. Around midnight, things got worse. We started hearing footsteps outside, moving slowly around the cabin. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Every few seconds the footsteps stopped directly outside a wall, before continuing again like whoever was outside was checking every part of the cabin. Then came scratching. Long scratches dragged across the wood walls like fingernails. Mason looked terrified and told Tyler to call the police, but Tyler checked his phone and quietly said there was no signal. Of course there wasn't. Then suddenly we heard something walking on the roof above us. Heavy footsteps slowly moved across the ceiling while the old wood creaked loudly overhead. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Then a voice came from above us. Tyler. Every hair on my body stood up because the voice sounded exactly like Mason, except Mason was sitting right beside me looking completely horrified. The voice came again from the roof, this time saying, "Tyler, come outside." Mason whispered that it wasn't him, and right after he said that, the thing on the roof started laughing. I will never forget that laugh for the rest of my life. It sounded broken and wrong, like something learning how humans laugh by listening to recordings. Then footsteps sprinted across the roof, and suddenly the back window exploded inward. Glass flew everywhere across the room while Eric screamed. Tyler aimed the flashlight toward the hallway, but there was nothing there except darkness. Then movement exploded in the woods around us. Branches snapped in every direction. Footsteps circled the cabin, and whistles started coming from different places at once. One from the left side of the woods, one behind the cabin, one farther back in the trees. Tyler quietly whispered that there was more than one out there. None of us slept that night. We pushed furniture against the doors and sat together, holding weapons while the sounds continued outside for hours. Every few minutes we heard voices in the woods, copying us perfectly. At one point, I heard my own voice outside the cabin, quietly begging for help, followed by horrible laughing. Around 3 a.m., something started crawling underneath the cabin. The floorboards shook lightly beneath our feet. Then came 3 slow knocks directly under us. Knock, knock, knock. Jake looked like he was about to cry, while Mason kept staring at the floor. Then suddenly a woman's voice came from directly outside the front door, crying and begging for help. But something about it felt wrong, because every sentence repeated exactly the same way, like a broken recording. Then came scratching on the front door, long, slow scratches like claws dragging across wood. After that, everything went silent again, and honestly that silence felt even worse because it felt like whatever was outside was waiting for one of us to make a mistake. Morning finally came around 6 a.m., and all the sounds stopped completely. Rain ended and sunlight slowly reached the clearing. Tyler told us we were leaving immediately, and nobody argued. While loading the truck, Eric suddenly froze and pointed at the mud surrounding the cabin. Huge footprints covered the ground. They looked almost human, except they were unnaturally long and thin. And there were dozens of them. Not one set, dozens. Then Mason found long finger marks in the mud near the broken back window. The fingers looked impossibly long, like spider legs. Tyler suddenly stopped moving and stared toward the woods. I looked too and instantly felt cold all over. Standing far back between the trees was the same tall figure from the night before, watching us completely still. Even in daylight, it looked wrong. Too thin, too tall. Its head slowly tilted to one side. Then it waved at us. We jumped into the truck immediately, and Tyler sped down the dirt road as fast as possible. Nobody spoke for nearly 20 minutes until Eric suddenly looked through the back window and whispered, "Oh my God." I turned around and saw something running beside the truck through the trees. It was keeping pace with us effortlessly. Tall, fast. Its arms swung unnaturally low while its body moved in horrible, jerking motions. Every few seconds it disappeared behind trees before reappearing even closer. Then came the whistle again, right beside the truck. Tyler slammed the gas pedal harder while the truck bounced violently across the rough road. The thing kept running beside us for another few seconds before suddenly disappearing into the woods. We finally reached the highway around noon, and the second we saw other cars again, all of us felt relief. But the story didn't end there. 3 days later, Tyler called me, sounding terrified. He finally convinced his uncle to tell him the truth about the cabin. Back in 1998, his uncle stayed there with another hunter. One night, they heard whistles outside, followed by voices and scratching beneath the cabin. The other hunter disappeared before sunrise and was never found. Search teams only found strange footprints surrounding the woods. Tyler's uncle also admitted that before his friend vanished, he claimed tall, pale figures watched them from between the trees every night. Exactly what we saw. I asked Tyler what happened to the cabin after we left. There was silence for a few seconds before he quietly said the cabin burned down the night before. At first I thought lightning hit it, but then Tyler told me something that still keeps me awake at night. Fire investigators found huge footprints surrounding the burned cabin. And according to one forest ranger, strange whistles were heard deep in the woods while the fire burned. I never went camping again after that trip, and sometimes late at night, I still wake up because I think I hear whistling outside my apartment window. One long whistle, then another, closer every time, like something finally followed me home. I still don't know if I did the right thing. What would you have done if you were me? Tell me in the comments. I still can't explain what we saw in Black Pine Forest that night, And honestly, I don't even try anymore because every time I think about it, I feel like something is listening to me from somewhere far away in the woods, waiting for me to talk about it again. It all started when my cousin Ethan called me out of nowhere and said he found something online about an abandoned fire tower deep in Oregon, a place people kept talking about in forums, saying strange lights were seen there at night, and sometimes voices came from inside the tower, even though it had been shut down for decades. Ethan was excited like it was some kind of adventure, and he invited me, along with his friends Noah and Brandon, for a weekend hike to see it ourselves. At first it sounded like just another hiking trip, nothing serious, just four guys going to the woods, camping, and checking out an old structure, but I remember something in my stomach already felt wrong even before we left. We drove for hours until the road slowly turned into dirt, and then even that started disappearing into thick forest. The deeper we went, the more silent everything became. No birds, no wind, no insects, just this heavy, unnatural quiet that made it feel like the forest was holding its breath. Brandon joked that it felt like we were entering a place people weren't supposed to be, but nobody laughed, not even Ethan. On the way, we stopped at a small gas station near the forest edge, and an old man behind the counter looked at us for a long time after seeing our camping gear. He didn't smile, didn't even greet us properly. He just asked where we were going, and when Ethan said Black Pine Forest, the man went completely silent for a few seconds like he was thinking about something he didn't want to remember. Then he finally said, "Don't stay there after dark," and went back to cleaning the counter like he regretted even speaking. Brandon tried to laugh it off outside, saying old people always say creepy things. But the man suddenly came back to the door and added, "If you hear knocking at night, don't answer it." That line stuck in my head more than anything else, but we still went anyway because none of us wanted to look scared in front of each other. By late afternoon, we were deep inside Black Pine Forest, and that's when the real feeling started, like something was watching us from between the trees, but never moving, just waiting. We kept hiking until we found a clearing and set up camp, and as soon as the sun started going down, the entire forest changed. The silence became heavier, almost pressure-like the air itself was closing in on us. Around 9 p.m., we sat around the campfire trying to act normal, but nobody was really relaxed. Noah kept looking into the dark trees like he expected something to step out any second. Then we heard it for the first time, 3 slow knocks from somewhere deep in the forest, like what hitting would, slow and deliberate, not random at all. We all froze at the same time. Ethan said it was probably another group of hikers, but even he didn't sound convinced. Then the knocking came again, closer this time, same rhythm, same slow pattern, like something was walking toward us while tapping on trees. Brandon picked up a flashlight and joked nervously that he was going to check it out, but before he even took a step, a voice came from the dark between the trees, soft and weak, saying, "Help me." We all turned instantly toward the sound, and the worst part was it didn't echo or move, it just stayed in one place, repeating again, "Please, help me," like it was stuck on loop. Noah whispered that something was wrong because the voice never got closer or farther, it just stayed exactly the same volume, like a recording played from the forest itself. Ethan stood up and said we should ignore it, but then the knocking started again, even closer than before, now coming from multiple directions at once. That's when we realized it wasn't just one source. It was around us. The fire suddenly flickered even though there was no wind, and for a second I thought I saw something standing between the trees, but when I focused, it was gone. We decided not to investigate and just stay near the fire, but nobody slept that night. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I woke up because I needed to pee, and the fire had almost died out, leaving everything in a deep orange glow. The forest beyond that glow was completely black, like a wall with no depth. I walked a few steps away from camp, and that's when I noticed something that made my entire body go cold, footprints in the dirt around our campsite. But they weren't normal. They were huge, barefoot, and strangely stretched like the toes were too long for a human. I followed them with my flashlight for a few seconds before realizing they formed a full circle around our camp, like something had been walking around us while we slept. I ran back immediately and woke the others, and when Ethan saw the tracks, his face changed completely. Nobody joked anymore after that. We stayed awake until sunrise, and when the light finally came, We decided to move toward the fire tower earlier than planned because nobody wanted to stay there another night. The hike toward the tower felt longer than it should have, and the deeper we went, the more we kept hearing small sounds in the distance, like branches snapping even when nothing was moving. By midday, we finally saw it, the fire tower rising above the trees like a rusted skeleton stuck in the sky. It looked abandoned for decades, metal stairs rusted, paint peeled off, and a small cabin at the top looked like it hadn't been touched in years. But something about it didn't feel abandoned. It felt watched. As we got closer, Brandon pointed upward and said he thought he saw something move inside the top cabin window. But when we all looked, there was nothing. Ethan laughed it off again, but this time his laugh felt forced. We started climbing the stairs one by one, and the metal creaked loudly under our weight, echoing through the forest like a warning. Halfway up, I swear I heard footsteps above us, slow and heavy, even though no one was up there yet. When we reached the top, the door to the cabin was slightly open, and that alone made Ethan stop for a second before pushing it. Inside smelled terrible, like rotting wood, and something dead trapped inside for years. Old radios, broken equipment, and papers covered in dust were scattered everywhere, and scratched in the wall near the window were words that made my stomach drop instantly. Don't look into the trees at night. Noah immediately said we should leave, but then Brandon found another message scratched deeper into the wood. IT copies voices. Before anyone could react, the entire tower shook slightly like something had grabbed it from underneath. Then came a knocking again. Not outside, not in the forest, from beneath the tower itself. Slow, deliberate. 3 knocks. Ethan leaned toward the stairs and shouted if anyone was there, but no answer came. Instead, a voice came from below, soft and familiar, saying Ethan's name, but it sounded exactly like his mother. Ethan froze completely. Noah whispered how something in the forest could know that voice, but before anyone could respond, the footsteps on the stairs started again, faster this time, metal vibrating violently as something climbed toward us. Brandon slammed the door shut, and we all backed away as the handle started shaking violently like something was trying to break in. Then came a sound from the window, something breathing, heavy and wet. And when Brandon slowly looked, he screamed and stumbled backward because a face was pressed against the glass, pale, stretched, with eyes too dark and a mouth too wide, smiling at us in a way no human mouth should ever move. It suddenly disappeared downward like it dropped off the tower, and the entire structure shook harder like whatever was had landed below and was now climbing again. We ran toward the stairs, thinking we could escape, but halfway down we heard it climbing up at impossible speed underneath us, metal screaming with each movement. I looked down and saw it clearly for a second, a pale thing moving like an animal, limbs bending wrong, pulling itself upward without stopping. Brandon kicked at it, and it made a sound like metal being torn apart mixed with a scream that didn't sound alive. It dropped for a moment, then jumped off the tower completely, disappearing into the trees. We ran down as fast as we could, but once we hit the forest floor, everything around us erupted in movement, branches snapping, footsteps circling, and voices started calling our names, all of them sounding like us. I heard Noah calling from my left, Ethan from behind, Brandon from somewhere ahead, but all of them were standing right next to me. That's when we realized whatever was in the forest was copying us perfectly. We ran without stopping, not even knowing where we were going, to try to escape the sounds that followed us from every direction. At one point I looked back and saw tall, pale figures between the trees, standing completely still, watching us run like it was entertainment. Eventually we found Ethan's truck near the forest edge just as the sun was setting again, and the moment we got inside, everything went silent like the forest had simply turned off. But when Ethan turned the ignition and the headlights lit up the windshield, there was writing on it in dirty finger marks that said "Stay out." Nobody had written it. Nobody else had been near the truck. Ethan didn't even speak. He just drove faster than I've ever